Hello all. This is Sinqlaison. It's for 4 p.m. Eve time, and I would like to start. First, do a quick sound check again. Do you guys all hear me clearly? That sounds like a resounding yes. Other than that, I don't understand the X's, but I assume it's okay. Thank you all for joining the class. This is my first class, so please bear with me. I undoubtedly will make stupid mistakes, and I'm also looking forward to your feedback at the end, including also your feedback of what type of classes to run hereafter. I'm relatively flexible on that one. This is a guide to making ESK, and based on the number of attendees, I see more than 140 people here. I assume that you guys are interested in the topic. If I go back to my start at Eve, I had a similar interest as you, as I was my ambitions far surpassed my monetary abilities. So I thought, how can I start making ESK? I did that by starting to do trading, and that's also why I wanted to start this class with making on trading. I'm currently also making supercarriers and titans, and that's why my classes will end with making supercarriers and titans. Although I realize that for some of you that is maybe a little bit over the top. By the way, thank you Ninja for posting the document, because that's indeed the document we are going to use in this class. This will be a lecture. It will not be a practical class. I can't show you my screen doing the trading actions, but I have made a presentation in which you can follow what I'm talking about. Now, before we go there, let me briefly introduce myself. Some of you know me because you have received donations from me when you reached student level in the past or sophomore level recently. Those who don't know me yet, the moment you will get to sophomore, you will get the 25 million donation also from me. Apart from supporting Eve University, I'm a trader, manufacturer. The reason that I'm supporting Eve University is because I produce weapons, sell weapons, and manufacture weapons. And I would like to encourage all of you to buy my weapons in the distant future when you're ready to fly Titans. For now, I would like to also give you a disclaimer, which is you can find that on page 1 of the presentation, which is that I have made many mistakes in the recent and more distant past, including losing billions of ESK on stupid things. You will give, for instance, flying around AFK with a skiff BPO in my belly, and I was blown up by some mercenary. Or buying an account which I did not know was forbidden, and I put a ballistic control system 2 BPO in it, which is now worth 70 billion, and I lost it. So that is a little bit of pity was that. Now, on page 2 of the presentation, you will find the overview of the classes. So as you see, we are today on the first course, the course about trading. After that, the second course will be about running a portfolio of businesses, because before soon you guys will find that in trading there's lots of money, but there are other things that you will find fun, like manufacturing or researching, and we will talk about that, including also how to make that manageable. The third class is about a couple of your best friends. The first friend you will have is the Excel spreadsheet. But there are more friends. For instance, working with mercenaries to protect your business and attack your enemies will be also part of the third class. And I will end with a fun class about building Titans. I have some experience in that, and I will share that in the last class. But as I said in the beginning, if you guys have preferences, if you want to learn about other topics, just let me know. Send me an email in Eve or otherwise, and I will accommodate. Obviously, if I have experience in it, because there are things that I don't know about. Now, what are we going to talk about in this class? It's going to be pretty brief. It's just 5 pages, and it's about trading. And when I started to do trading, I started to do what most people do in EVE, which is to run around between trading hubs and arbitraging between buy and sell prices in those trading hubs. But I quickly found out that it was not the smartest way to do trading. And I found a different way to do trading, which brought me my first billion, then my first 10 billion, then my first 100 billion. And that went relatively fast. So I thought you guys might be interested. So that's going to be number A. So choose your trading method. Then obviously, after you've chosen the method, you have to choose what you want to trade in. And so that's the second part, what we are going to talk about. The third part is when you are increasing your trading business, you are going to run into all kinds of problems. You will not have enough skills, you will not have enough capital. And how do you deal with that? So how do you grow as fast as possible without getting stuck? And then D is, I hope you can still hear me. Somebody's saying that I'm breaking up. Okay, good. Apologies for that. Then when you do trading and when you have a successful trading business, you will quickly find that there are people that want to copy what you're doing, and they are going to trade in the same items as you do, in the same trading hubs as you do, and you have to deal with them. And that's the fourth part. And then obviously, apart from dealing with them, they want to deal with you. So there are also tricks to make sure that they can't find you and can't deal with you. So that's that's a big fast overview of the presentations. Then let's dive into the content. And by the way, guys, if you have any questions in between, post them in the class channel. I will try to note them down, preferably when we are still on a page, so that I can immediately answer them. So we are now on page 3 of the presentation, which is find the best method to trade. Now, and I listed here 3 methods that I'm aware of. And they're not good or not bad. I've used all 3 of them, but I mainly use number 3. But let me go through them one by one. The first one is speculation. And that what you know something, or you think you know something which is going to happen in EVE. And that thing that is going to change in EVE, for instance, an upcoming release, is going to spike demand for a certain item. If that's the case, you know that there is going to be an increase in that there will be an increase in demand. Prices will spike, likely, and you can buy up stuff up front. For instance, I've done this recently when the player-owned customs offices were announced. I checked then in the forums what items were going to be the items from which you could produce those player-owned customs offices, and I bought for roughly 40 billion ESK, sorry, not euro, I'm not that rich, the 40 billion ESK stuff, which I offloaded on the market in the first week after the release. So that's speculation, and that's it can also go horribly wrong. For instance, I've bought for 50 billion euro of rare moon materials, and until now prices have not moved at all and are even going down a little bit. So I could easily lose a lot of money on that. That's speculation. The second one is arbitrage trading. There was a question here of how much the 40 billion investment on the customs offices earned me. That was roughly 25 billion. But I must also confess that was the first time that I really did a speculative trade. Now, what I did in the beginning, it was arbitrage trading. You see the picture there of EVE Marketeer. And Eve Marketeer is a tool. It's made by a Dutch friend of mine. This is not, by the way, an advertorial for Eve Marketeer, but with which you can spot price differences between trading hubs for certain items, including the volumes with which they are being traded, and then you can buy them low here and sell them high there. And obviously it involves couriering them from one place to the next. Thanks for the link, by the way. That's it. I've done that at the beginning with minor tools. They were relatively cheap, and I could fly them from one location to the next. But it involved a lot of work, and after some time I thought, I don't like it. I make some money, but it takes me far too much time. So then I moved to the third way of trading, which is price spike trading. Now, one of the advantages of Eve is that you can set buy orders that will live for 3 months. So what I did is I was starting to look for items that were relatively spiky, that went up and down a lot in price, and that had a tolerable volume. And I put down buy orders for, say, 60 and sell orders for 100. I always had roughly 1/3, 40% price differences between buying and selling. And that quickly turned out to be extremely profitable. And every time I was on Eve forums and looking at manuals of how to do trading and stuff like that, it always struck me that nobody was talking about this third way of trading. And whilst it basically earned me most of the money I made in trading, almost all the money I made in trading. And what you do is you make use of laziness or cash hungriness of other players. So players come into a trading hub, they just shot something and they want to get rid of it. Immediately get rid of it. They don't want to have sell orders standing there. They are afraid their sell orders will be beaten by other players. So they sell it to the first guy in the market with the highest price. And that would then be, for certain items, me. And I then immediately reset it, or not immediately, but maybe after a day or 2 or 3 or 4, when I log into that character again and I find that it has bought some stuff, I reset it at a price which is 1/3 or 40% higher. And obviously I have to wait then for the next lazy guy that's coming in and that doesn't want to wait for, that does not want to put a buy order down for his stuff, but wants to immediately buy it. And he buys it from me. So it's for lazy bums on both sides. It's for lazy bums on the buying and the selling side, and it's for lazy bums on the trading side, because basically what I do is I set a buy order, I leave it go for 3 months, and I set sell orders that I let go for 3 months. And what I do is I log into these characters every couple of days to check whether they bought, and then I resell again. So I hope that is a little bit clear. Then how does that? Then if you have that clear, how do you find those items that lend themselves to it? I will get to your question there in a second. How do you find items? I look for items in 3 ways, and that's on page 4. On page 4, you will find that I look for items which have a relatively good volume, with lots of price spikes, and not too expensive. Why? Now, and I've got an example of each of those, of how not to do it in the graphics. So the first one is, what is a nice volume? A nice volume is stuff that has some turns on the market. And you see there the example of an implant. It's the HY 2.5 implant. If you look at in the market, you will find it. If you type in HY space 2.5, it's an item that basically never sells. So it might be super spiky in prices, but there's no volume. So you're not interested in that one. Then you're looking for, so it has to have a tolerable volume, a couple of maybe 3, maybe 5, maybe 10 buy and sell orders executed each day. Then the second check you do, and you can do all those checks by going to the market, so which you can do now whilst listening to me. You just open an item on the market, for instance this miner 2, in the market wherever you might be, and if you then go to the tab which is called price history, and then look at the bottom of the page, you see show graph, which you then can change from 10 days to a month or 3 months. What you will see is then the quantity sold. And with that, you have a pretty good understanding of, is this thing actually selling? But you also see a column called low and a column called high. And what you see if it's a good item is you see at least 30, 40, 50% price differences between the low price and the high price. And I put in to the presentation the example of miner 2s. And why? In this case, because they are not spiking in price at all. And you see on the graph that the volume is good, but the price is absolutely stable over time. And so you would not be interested in trading in that item. You would be interested in trading in an item as on the previous page. On the previous page I showed this little graphic. I forgot what item it was. Oh yeah, copacetic something, particle field accelerator. You saw good volume there, and you also saw good up and down prices, nice and spiky. There's a question here on the price history is graphed from data of your station, solar region or regional filter. And what I do is, that's a question by Was, I do it on a regional level because my buy orders and sell orders are for a complete region. Obviously you need the skills for that, but that's what I'm using. The third way to identify the right item to trade in is that they're not too expensive. And I gave here the example of the Halo Alphas. So if you go onto the market, and I assume that if you're in high sec, you will find that those items are relatively expensive. They cost a couple of million, and if you want to build up a nice group of orders, you will quickly have 50 or 100 orders, and that means that if you multiply that by 2-3 million, you immediately need 200-300 million to do the trading. And that's why I did not start trading in Halo Alphas, but I tried the trading in stuff like miner 2s. At least in my time when I started 5 years ago, they were nice and spiky. They're not anymore, but at that time they were nice and spiky. And so they were not expensive, nice and spiky, a nice volume, and I started trading in them. Then, how do you do that trading? As I said before, you set the buy order. You set this, and every week I have a rhythm. Every week I log into a character. I have multiple characters now. I log into a character and I see if he has bought anything. Then I click on those items and immediately in my via the assets tab, and I sell them. And I put a sell order there for a period of 3 months. So I don't do an immediate sell, because then you sell it to the next buyer, but I sell it with a price increase of 30-40%. And then there was the question of Nair, who asked, do I then do this 1 ESK above changing in my order prices? So do I change my order prices? Yes, I do so. Every week when I log into a character, I go through all my buy orders, which I have in my quick bar, and I check whether they have been beaten by others. If they are beaten, I increase my price to my buy price to just above their buy price. Never too much, because that drives up buy prices, which I don't want, but just above. And I typically do not change my sell prices. because my experience is that it's more critical to do the buying correct and to update your buy prices than that it is important to increase or decrease your sell prices. In the end, those items will sell. The problem is buying them in the first place. So page 4 basically described how I do the selection of the items that I trade in. Then we go to page 5. Page 5 talks about bottlenecks, because in the beginning, if you select 1 or 2 items and you start trading in it, you will not face many bottlenecks. But after some time, you will run into bottlenecks, and those bottlenecks will change over time. The first bottleneck is that you will run into the maximum amount of orders that you have available. And I don't know about you guys, but if you go to your skills with your character, under trading, you will find a couple of skills that one after the other determine the amount of orders you can buy and sell, orders combined you can have. The first is trade, then there's retail, then there's wholesale, and finally there's Tycoon. I would not expect you guys to have Tycoon trained to level 5, but in the end I do, for almost all my characters. And that provides you with 301 buy and sell orders. But that's a first bottleneck that you will run into. That's bottleneck 1. Now, obviously, to deal with that bottleneck, you can increase the number of characters, which I did. So I added more trading characters. And as I explained, you can train more skills: trade, retail, wholesale, Tycoon, in that order. That's bottleneck 1. Then bottleneck 2 that you will almost inevitably run into is ESK. So because trading does not come for free, trading costs you capital. Because if you have a buy order, what Eve does, unless you have the skills, is it immediately subtracts the amount of ESK required for fulfilling that buy order from your wallet. So assume that you set a buy order for something which is costing 1 million. You set a buy order of 5 items. It immediately subtracts 5 million. You then later on buy 2 of those items. You're then still at minus 5 million, and you set sell orders for those 2 items that you've bought for 2 million each. So only after those 2 sell orders have been successful, you have earned then 4 million, you're back to minus 1 million. But so the point is, trading costs you capital. Capital for buy orders, and capital in the items that you've bought. Now, there are several ways to deal with that. The first way is to train a skill which is called margin trading. The margin trading reduces your capital need of buy orders. It reduces, if my memory doesn't fool me, to 20% of the buy price. So if I set a buy order for 5 items for 1 million, which cost me 5 million, if I have margin trading 5, it will only deduct 1 million now from my wallet. However, exactly, that's the one else here, thanks. However, at the moment that the item is bought, the other 80% is reduced from my wallet. But at least, given that not all my buy orders are are successful at the same time, it reduces the amount of capital I need. Then, and obviously, if I cancel my orders or if they expire after 90 days, I get the money back, which is one of the questions in the game channel. Then the second thing I do is I given that I do need an amount of cash on my character, just in case the buy orders are successful, I can also put my various characters in one corporation which share corporation cash. That's the second way of reducing my cash needs. So I basically share it, pool it between various characters. And the third thing I do is sometimes I update my sell orders. As I said before, I don't do that very regularly, but if I'm running into cash problems, I do it. For instance, I have now some extremely expensive sell orders at Jita, and for those I take the time and the trouble to also update my sell orders in order to get rid of those items as fast as possible. There's a question in the channel about what happens if you don't have the capital to cover the margin buy when you buy the item. And basically, so say that I have set a buy order for 1 million. I have margin trading 5, so basically it reducted only 200,000 from my wallet. The rest of my wallet is 100,000, and then somebody tries to sell it to me. What then happens is basically the order is cancelled. So I don't get the item. Now, so this is your second bottleneck. So dealing with ASK. So you're having the amount of capital available. And by the way, if you want to do a rough calculation of how much capital you need, my experience is that typically for every buy order, so if you have a buy order for one item, you have 2 sell orders for that item. So it takes a little bit more time to sell it. And if this thing is worth 1 million, that means that the total capital is then 1 million buy order times 20%, if you have margin trading 5, is 200,000, plus 2 sell orders of 1 million each, is 2 million, plus the 200,000 is 2.2 million. And so 1 buy order, 2 sell orders, and multiply the buy order by 20%. So that's roughly the amount of capital you need. Malcolm asks if it's okay to tell me what my most expensive sell orders are. Now, and I will. I just before this course started, updated my Jita sell orders. And let me have a look if I can find the item. Here it is. Oops. No, I don't know. It doesn't work. It's the KNB 88. It's a item which is roughly 800 million worth. Then the third problem you might have is time. Because in the end, if you are building this trading business successfully, it's going to take you lots of time. Now, how to deal with limited time? The first one is use the market quick bar. So if you open in your in-game open the market tab, you will find sub-tabs which are called browse, search, and quick bar. And under quick bar, you can put down the names of all the items you are regularly trading in, and that makes it much easier to quickly go through the buy and sell orders you have standing. Second way of dealing with limited time is you can get help from a program. I've not used it myself yet, Eve Marketeer for that, but I know people use it. And it gives you a sign if your buy or sell order is beaten by others. The third bullet on page 5 on the right hand side is update your buy orders more often than your sell orders. That one I already talked about. And then the fourth one is use Excel to trigger updates. So what does that mean? Now, somebody asked in class whether I had different accounts or different alts. Now, I have both. I have multiple accounts, and on those accounts I have multiple alts with which I do trading, and then it quickly becomes a little bit difficult to follow. And I trade in different trading hubs. And what I do is I know in which trading hub I have more competition than in other trading hubs. And so what I do in Excel, I just put down a reminder that says to me, in this trading hub, for instance, in Amar orders, you should update your orders every 3 days, in Jita every day, but in, for instance, Verke Vendor or some other place, don't bother going there more often than once every 2 weeks because you're facing no competition whatsoever. That saves me time. Another one is, but that requires more alts, is that I have by now characters in every major trading hub. I obviously did not have that in the beginning, but if you have multiple characters on your account, you can train them all to some reasonable skill level on trading, and that prevents the problem of flying around. And because with this trading strategy that I'm now explaining to you, you don't have to fly around at all. You can just sit in your trading hub, and once every week or once every whatever, you update your buy orders and you update your sell orders. And based on that, you don't have to fly around, and that saves you time. And if you have to move between trading hubs, what I do use are jump clones, so that again saves me time. So this is basically page 5, all the ways that I use to save myself time. Make sure that I have enough characters. I said it wrong. Not to save myself but time, but to deal with all my bottlenecks. So number 1 was make sure that I have sufficient trade positions. Number 2 is reduce my capital needs so that I can deal with that. And number 3 is make sure that I spend as little time on this as possible. And the amount of time I now spent on my trading business is typically not more than 10 or 20 minutes per day. And my estimate is that my trading business currently earns something like 5 billion ESK per day, per week. So in the end, you can make money here with relatively little amount of effort. Any questions on this one from you guys? If it's not, then I will continue. And that is page 6, which is talking about dealing with my enemies. Okay, I see a question in the chat channel, which is how do you check 300 orders in 20 minutes? Now, I don't. That goes relatively fast because if I have 300 orders, as I said before, for every buy order there are 2 sell orders. So it's not more than 100 items. So in reality, I'm trading maybe in 60, 70 items. And if you all have them in your quick bar, in your market quick bar, you can quickly cycle through them just with your mouse button down, 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 down. And every time you will see, if you click on an item and you have to tap market data open, you will see the buy prices and the sell prices. That's a good question because I forgot something. You have to make your own prices recognizable for yourself. And so that means that, and that is against some of the lessons I will talk about on page 6 or 7. It's a trade-off. But my prices I can recognize because they look in a certain way. For instance, they have they are always ending at 0.7 or always ending at 0.32. And just then by looking at the market tab, the buy orders and the sell orders for an item that I'm trading in, I can immediately see if all my buy orders end at 0.32, I can immediately see if there's a 0.32 which is the highest buy order and the lowest sell order. So that's how I quickly check 300 orders in less than 20 minutes. There's a question about how much I earn per character. I've got something like 15 characters doing trading. So that's roughly 400-500 million per character. That's also a next question, which was how many characters do you currently own that are involved in trading? Now, that's roughly 15. But as I said before, this is not how I started. So don't think that I started with 15 characters or that I made 400 million per characters in the beginning. I made much less in the beginning, but I found out that I got quite quickly to a capital of 1 billion. Then there's a question, is there a reason why you have 2 sell orders per item? No, I do not. Sorry. Yes, there's a reason for that. I would not have 2 buy orders for an item. I only would have 1 buy order for an item. But on the sell orders, as I explained before, every week I check, or 3 days, or every day, every 3 days, every week, every 2 weeks, depending on how much competition there is. I check whether I've bought stuff, and then I immediately reset them, I resell them. And so that means that for certain items, say in the past 3 months, I have bought 4 items, 1 2 months ago, 1 a month ago, 1 a week ago, and 1 today. I would then have 4 sell orders. Obviously, those sell orders expire after 90 days. So then it can happen that they are being combined in somewhere in your items, and that you can sell them more easily. Then there's a question: do you find it better to hold bought items back to the trade hub, or do you just resell where you bought them? Excellent question. In the beginning, I was really pressed for time. So what I did is I resold them at the place that I bought them, which is not ideal, because, for instance, if you are trading in a region where Rens is, or Yita, or Amar Or is, or Dodixie, people want to buy ideally in those big trading hubs. But I did not have time to hold them all to those trading hubs. So I resold them at the place that I bought them. That saved me time, because then my big bottleneck was time. But later, when I was starting to do more expensive items, like the item that I just copied into this chat window, the items were worth it to be held. So I'm now using couriers, public couriers, to haul my stuff back to the big trade hubs, where I then reset them to sell orders. And that makes sure that they're being sold faster. But it is not really needed. So if your prices are good, then they will sell. I would like to go to page 6 now. Page 6 is about dealing with enemies. Now, and I find that dealing with enemies, I forgot something very important, and which is prevent having enemies. And that goes basically back to the selection of the items, and the selection of the items on page 4. I forgot something there too, which is to make sure that there's limited competition. I will add that for the next installment. So the best way to deal with enemies is not to have any enemies. To give an example of that, if you trade in Yita, which I did in the beginning, before Yita became a real trade hub, it was lots of fun. There was good volume and there were not too many people doing trading. At this moment in time, it's a complete nightmare. People are updating their orders every 10 minutes, so it hardly makes any sense anymore to trade in Yita, because it takes an enormous amount of time. So I trade in all hubs except for Yita. All main hubs, sorry, except for Yita. So that's maybe lesson 1 on dealing with enemies. Prevent having them. Then if you have a particularly nasty enemy that you want to deal with, this is what I do on page 6, is I do a couple of things. But before you dive in with me, please be aware that this is not the key part of my way of trading. And this is just to deal with 1 or 2 nasty guys. But the most important things I've already explained on the previous pages. So don't think that you have to do what I'm now going to explain on page 6 and 7 in order to do proper trading. And you can, if you stop now and you just use what I've explained until now, I think you will have a wonderful trading business. But just for those who are interested, this is what I did a couple of times when I was trading and stuff, and I got embroiled with enemies. So the first thing I did is I made sure that I could recognize them. And that's on the left-hand side of page 6, is people, in order to save time, when they check their orders, they want, as I explained on the previous page, they want their orders to be visible for themselves. So they have a certain way of notating them. For instance, this guy that that has always 10 before the 0.00. That's a way to find an enemy. So they always use the same type of notation. Then what you do is you buy or you sell an item from them, and that sounds expensive, but it is not. So he has a buy order for 1 million. You sell it to him for you sell one item to him for 1 million that you just bought from somebody else. It costs you a little bit of money, and you record his name. Then you check whether he's part of a corporation, a relatively small corporation. You can use Eve Central Intelligence for that. You can also click on obviously on his corporation to see the size of it. And you will quickly get an understanding of what type of corporation he's part of. And for instance, when I started trading, I was running into a guy from Russia that was particularly painful for me. So I checked out all his, I noted on the left of this page how he notated his buy and sell orders, and then I started tracking his actions. So what I did is I found his characters by buying and selling some of the stuff to him and from him, and then in their contacts, I made sure that I put him on my watch list, so that every time he logged in or logged out, that I would get a message. And then I started to deal with him. First option you have is what the guys basically are doing in Jita, is every time he logs in or logs out, you improve on his orders by 1 cent. That is extremely frustrating. And so he might thereafter give up. Then if that doesn't work, then you send him a mail. You say, I know all your identities, and you cost me time and I cost you time. Why don't we split up the market? And given that there is no antitrust authority in this game, that is something that is perfectly acceptable within Eve. So you basically split up the market. I made that offer to my Russian friend, but he in the end turned that offer down. Then I went through the next level, which I threatened him. I said, if you don't cooperate with me, collude with me, I will destroy profits in this area. And that worked quite well. So basically what I did is I increased my buy orders in price and I decreased my sell orders in price, but with just a little bit of profit in between. And that quickly drove him away from 1 or 2 places, because he could not make money anymore, and I thereafter reduced my buy prices and increased my sell prices and made profits again. And then one final option you have, but that's a pretty expensive one. I used it only once, which is to hire a mercenary to track down all his characters flying around in space. In my third course, I will talk much more about working with mercenaries, by the way, in manufacturing business. That is how you deal with enemies. In the end, it can be pretty effective. But as I said before, the best way of dealing with enemies is to prevent having any enemies. So in selecting your items on page 4, add a column which is check for limited competition. By the way, I see I kind of quotes in the game channel that I sound like a bankster, a Godfather, or Jimmy Hoffa, etc., etc. That's obviously all untrue. Let me then go to the last page, which is the other side of being nasty to your enemy, is that they could return you the favor. And there are a couple of ways that will help you being targeted by others. The first one is make your orders difficult to recognize, so don't use the 10-cent notation or anything like that. And what I do, for instance, when I buy something, I set random sell orders. So I just click sell. I change the first one or two digits to a nice sell price, and then I press sell. And that way, like it says, use random sell order amounts. It looks very funny, and people will not be able to recognize it. And yes, Marcel Locks, I am Dutch. You are right. Then the second way of being not being targeted is don't put all your corporate mates in one corporation. That's nice from cash pooling, but it's absolutely horrible from being targeted by enemies. And maybe in the beginning that is not so important, but later it is when you start in manufacturing or POS work or working with POSes, then it's super critical that people cannot target you, and you cannot start early enough in your career about being anonymous. So all my trades between you can check my history, but all my trades are not between me and corp mates, not public orders unless I want to have them public. But it is very important to do this, because later on people will start tracking you down if you become more interested for them. And then finally, you can also use separate buy and sell characters, and that makes it even more difficult for others to track you down. But it's a little bit of a pain, because then you have to transfer items from one character to the next. Now, consider the last two pages as a nice addendum. So pages 6 and 7, they are not the most critical thing in your trading strategy. The most critical thing is, as I said before, is choose your trading strategy. So speculation, if you have advanced warning about stuff, but it's typically a one-off. Arbitrage trading, which I did in the beginning, which helps to build initial amounts of ESK. And then especially what I call price spike trading, which I've started to do 5 years ago and I'm still doing, which makes boatloads of money and which hardly costs any time. And page 4 and 5 are also critical. The pages about then how do you find those items and how do you deal with all your bottlenecks. So that concludes the main part of this trading lecture. Open to more questions. I see one question coming through on is it true that there are bots that adjust the market orders? I think that is true. I'm not 100%, as you will not be surprised. I've never used them. I think they are super scary also in getting you banned. It's not worth it. If you are smart and select your trading strategy and your items smartly, you don't need any bots. But I'm sure that there are people who have devised such bots. Then there's a question from Captain Mercator, who said, where was it that the market window showed the quantity sold? Now, if you go onto the market window and you click on an item, whatever item, you will see two tabs on the right-hand side, a market data tab and a price history tab. If you're on the price history tab, in the third column, you see quantity. And obviously, you should do it in such a way that the last date, 11th of December, is on top. There's a question. There is a question here about is it profitable to go to YITA as the highest price orders, or just sell at the next place? and as I said before, I would not sell at Jita unless I would be in a hurry. So for high prices and low, so high sell prices, low buy prices, don't go to Jita, but go somewhere else. But you have to accept that it then takes a little bit longer to get rid of your items. What are more questions? Boom, boom, boom. Here it says, going back to slide 4 on finding items to buy, does it take a lot of time to scroll through the market looking at the graphs until you find the item to buy? Do you focus on particular market groups? Yeah, that's an interesting question, because basically it saves you a lot of time if you have a little bit of brains to find the items. The way to think about it is don't go for items that players manufacture themselves in game, because they will not likely sell those items at a big profit. Go for items that players get, that they win. So for instance, mission rewards or LP store rewards that they buy, that they see as basically not as something that they've created through hard work, but that they have just fallen on their lap. And those, in my experience, they allow themselves to sell to you at low prices in order to get back fast cash. Other questions? Okay, there's a question here. What is your goal? For me, at some point, i.e. 10 billion ESK, just making ESK seem pointless. That's what I thought in the beginning as well. In the end, people have very different goals with their money. But typically what you do with the money is to pursue your ambitions, and whilst you continue in EVE, your ambitions go up continuously. My aim, for instance, is to massively influence the course of EVE, hiring Pandemic Legion at one moment in time to do what I want, as an example. But that cost a couple of billions. What time period do you suggest dealing with, is a question. Is it better to look in a 3 months window or in 6 months? Now, for me, 3 months is typically enough. If you don't see any volumes and price spikes in 3 months, it's not worth it, really. Because then it takes too long for your buy orders to lead to buys, and it takes too long for sell orders to lead to sells. The question here is whether visibility is worth trading on a trade toon. I don't really know. I'm sorry about that. In the beginning of EVE, I trained all my characters. When I started trading a couple of years ago, I trained them in full. And I always was a little bit puzzled to understand what marketing, procurement, trading, and the like all did, and visibility. I know for a fact the skills that I mentioned, trade, retail, wholesale, tycoon, that you need them for quantity. I think visibility is important to make sure that your sell orders are being seen, but I'm not 100% certain of that. Then there's a question: how do I add an item to the toolbar, to the quick bar? Sorry. Now you go to the market tab. You go to search, for instance, and you type in say 2.5. You will get a list of items, and then you right-click them, and you get the option to add it to your quick bar. In your quick bar, you can have various tabs or folders that you can create, but that is a choice you have. I did not do that in the beginning. Aside from trade skills, is a question: are there other skills you would recommend? For instance, industrial ships for hauling. I traded typically in items in the beginning that were extremely small, so I preferred shuttling them. from one place to the next. So I did not use a lot of industrial skills, industrial holders for them. I'm currently also trading in expensive ships, so faction battleships and the like. Those need obviously something larger than a shuttle to get them from A to B, but I'm outsourcing that to a great friend of mine who's doing all the courier business. Any other questions? Questions that I missed? If not, oh, there's a question here. Who are your biggest competitors? Now, in the beginning, that was this Russian guy, but in the end, he stopped, and partly we reached an understanding. At the moment, I don't really know. I'm now trading in items that I have that either I have limited competition, or if competition is getting too much, I just get out of the item and I move into other items that have less competition, but require more capital. I missed the answer on the question of how to add the quick bar. Okay, now I think I answered that twice, so somebody might answer that in the game channel. No. I think I answered. Oh yeah, there's a question here. What is the best way to find items? I think I also answered that one earlier by first using brains about finding items that people are likely to sell at a loss, so to speak, because they receive them for free rather than manufacture them themselves. And are there any cyclic patterns in the market that are worth being aware of, is a question. That is getting close to speculative trading, which is not a trading strategy that I normally do. So I gave the example at the beginning about player-owned customs offices, which was for me a speculative trade, or the RS-64 moon materials, which is also a speculative trade. But I don't normally do that, so I don't look at cycles. Only thing I do is if the sell prices go down for more than 2 months, then I reduce also my buy prices. But typically they come up again. Then there's a question of Minaki saying, I assume you limit your buy orders to station then. No, I don't. My buy orders are always for the region. And in the beginning, I sold them wherever I bought them. Now I hold them, or I have them hold to the main trade hubs where I can sell them more easily. Then there's a question, are you more a reseller than a manufacturer? On trading, I'm a reseller, absolutely. I'm also a manufacturer, but that, for instance, of Titans and other stuff, but I will get back to that in one of the later courses. And I think we are almost at the end, so let me think if there's one or two last questions. A totally noob question, it says, but I don't know what the trade hubs are. How do you find out where those are at? Now, the way to do that is if you go to an item, so say you are in the forge area, you go to an item, say a miner 2, and you click on this item and you look at the buy and the sell orders. Those, the trade hubs will immediately show on the right hand side in the form of the places where people buy and the places where people sell. So you will see Yita 4 a great many times there, and that then is a trade hub. How do you, it's another question, are there items you would recommend to start trading with, maybe ammunition or so? No, I don't know, Alcius. I gave you on page, what was it, 4? Yes, 4. I gave you on page 4 the way to find them, but I've not recently looked myself at items I would have started trading on if I would have started playing EVE in 2010 or 2011. That's why I gave you the way to look at it on page 4, but it will take a little bit of research yourself. Then there's a question of Victor Brouw, who says, how do you manage region orders where you have things over 30, 40 stations? That's what I explained on the quick bar. So I have them in the market quick bar, and I have my orders recognizable in some form, for instance 0.32 at the end or something like that. Then there's a question, that's going to be the last question, then I'm going to stop because it's time. It seems your strategy relies on prices generally not falling below what you bought them for. I assume you're not actually writing down what you bought items for. You're just buying and selling and trusting prices not to drop. Yes, Iris, you're completely right. And sometimes I make a mistake. For instance, there are items in game called F60, K60 something. If you find them, you will see that they traded before at maybe 140 million, 170 million. I was buying them at 100 million, but then they dropped way below 100 million, and I made a loss on it. But my experience is that that happens not very often. CCP has inflation under control pretty well, but sometimes it happens, and yes, then you take a loss. Then that's too bad. And I would like to leave it at this. Thank you, Khaldun. That's the item. I would like to leave it at this, given it's 5 o'clock. And I would like to ask you if you have any suggestions for me for next courses in terms of how to do it better. Send me a mail. And if you have suggestions for what I should concentrate on in next courses, next classes, by all means send me a mail. I'm more than happy to oblige. So thank you all very much. It was a pleasure.